I'm Robert Shetterly. I live in Brooksville, Maine. I'm an artist. I'm an activist. And now almost 17 and a half years ago, I began a portrait project, which I call Americans Who Tell the Truth. I must say this was not something I intended or even wanted to do, but right after 9/11, when the United States began the propaganda and misinformation and lies that were trying to take us into the Iraq War, I realized that I needed to do something different with my life, that I needed to respond in a way that made me feel less alienated from this country, to make me feel like I actually belonged here. Otherwise, I felt maybe I should leave the country. And my response was to paint a series of pictures of people that make me feel good about this country rather than obsess any longer about the ones who don't. And what I mean by that is, you know, there's a long history in the United States of people who believe deeply and passionately in the values of the country, but see that there's an enormous gulf between what we say and what we actually do. And when in 1787, when we separated or signed the Constitution, and all of those great words about justice and freedom and equality were given only to well-to-do white men, there's been a serious problem. And that problem has been remedied, when it is remedied, by the people who've been marginalized, the people left out, the people who have suffered oppression and prejudice. And so I began painting those people. You know, I began with people like Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Jane Addams and Mother Jones, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, all these 19th century figures who stood up for the end of slavery, for the rights of women, for workers' rights, for a whole host of issues that have tried to make this country live up to its own ideals. I had the idea I'd paint 50 portraits. I never thought I would actually paint 50 portraits. I thought they would end up in my basement and nobody would care about them except that I would feel better because I'd done this. Instead, I began to show them and people began to ask me to talk about them. And for a long time, I thought that the paintings themselves, in a sense, were the education project. They were, just by the fact of them, being who they were, people would respond and take them as how I meant them, as examples of moral courage and of courageous citizenship. So we realized we needed to have something deeper than just the portraits. We needed an educational project, and we started what we call the Samantha Smith Challenge here in Maine, getting the portraits into schools where kids act like this young peace activist from Maine, Samantha Smith, where they choose an issue of their own interest in the world. They research it, they respond to it, and they work inside and outside the school towards some kind of solution. You know, it's a great thing to for young people, even as young as 11, 12, 13 years old, to find out that their voice actually matters, that they can change things. And that's what this project has become all about. It's about giving kids models of people who stood up to some kind of injustice or oppression and actually accomplished something, changed something about either a very local or a national or international bit of history. And when I said I wanted to paint 50 portraits, I've now painted nearly 250 portraits. I can't stop because it is so fascinating to learn the history that is left out of our history books, the history that is not told in our media, to give people examples of moral courage and citizenship that is not the corporate model and the model that actually makes a difference in people's lives.